Hi, I'm Andy McGuire. I will be presenting on the Woodland Stewardship plans for the state of Minnesota and our financial incentives program. I am the Division of Forestry Incentives Coordinator. So a general overview of PFM in Minnesota is working with private landowners to meet their goals for their privately owned woodlots. Our field visits with the CFM DNR forester are free of charge. This is a map of our CFM areas. They closely follow our DNR areas, and this map can be found online with links to our specific foresters by clicking on the areas. But that just gives you a general overview of where we work and how we work. So why is managing private forests important? Private land is where we can reach our statewide conservation goals. A lot of these goals pertaining to timber, wildlife habitat, recreation, water and air quality cannot be attained without private land contributions because there's so much throughout the state. And as we move into the future, a lot of driving factors seem to be focused on our clean water and carbon sequestration going into the future. Again, PFM for importance, 47% of Minnesota forests are on private land, about 6.8 million acres. And 4.3 million of these acres are parcels of 20 to 200 acres. And historically, private land is where the bulk of our timber volume is harvested in Minnesota. That hasn't been the case too much lately, but historically that is what was going on. So what is an incentive program? So our cost share program are designed to reimburse landowners for implementing practices for conservation on their property. Usually cost share and incentive programs are sponsored by a unit of government, but may be a local conservation organization as well. Currently, I'm not aware of anyone else in Minnesota doing cost share programs other than the federal government and state government. So why do these incentive programs exist? The government puts a lot of money into these programs, and with that, the idea is that every dollar invested in conservation practices will be more beneficial going down the line. And these benefits may be either a direct return on investment or perceived and realized gains going into the future. So where does the DNR start with helping landowners? First is looking at property-wide management planning, and through that is the Forest Stewardship Program, which is run and funded by the U.S. Forest Service, and they provide us with goals and objectives for our private lands, and we get to run it through the state of Minnesota. It encourages long-term stewardship. They have a 10-year lifespan, and provides landowners with professional planning and technical assistance, so they can be productive and in healthy conditions. So the product we get with that is a woodland stewardship plan. So our woodland stewardship plan, like I said, they have a 10-year lifespan. We require that a landowner has at least 20 acres of non-ag and non-developed land to qualify. We can do shorter plans, but for an actual registered woodland stewardship plan, you need 20 acres of forested area. The plans are written by a DNR approved plan writer, so we run a system to make sure our plan writers throughout the state are certified. Bulk of these are private consultants doing this on their own as their own business. Our soil and water conservation districts also do them, and DNR foresters are certified as well. But because of other duties DNR foresters have, we usually push to go to private consultants to help them out and give them business. So that professional forester walks the woods and develops a plan based on the landowner's objectives as well as the state objectives and what makes sense out there on the ground. The DNR forestry fee, just to give an idea of how much these plans cost to get written, are $350 base and $7 an acre after that. But we do provide a $300 incentive reimbursement for having a plan written. If it's by the DNR or a private consultant or soil and water, that $300 is available for everybody. So what does a woodland stewardship plan do? So a forester will look at the ground and then break up the area into specific cover types. And the management recommendations are developed for each of these cover types. An easy way to find out more about this is just by Googling MN Forest Stewardship. The DNR webpage is usually the first on top, and you can click it and kind of explore a little bit more about that if you're interested. So what are these woodland stewardship plan benefits? So why would you have one written? So it provides you a guide to help develop and use the land how you want and how the resources should be utilized. The stewardship plan is one of the main requirements for either of our tax programs as well. And I will explore those few sides later. So the two are the 2C managed forest land and the Sustainable Forestry Incentives Act, often referred to as the SFIA. So these tax incentive programs, the big one throughout the state right now is the Sustainable Forestry Incentive Act. It was put in place in 2002 and revamped a little bit back in 2017, 2018. Then the law was rewritten and gave administration to the Department of Revenue and DNR Forestry to actively run it together. How we usually describe it is the Department of Revenue handles the people and the payments, and the DNR Forestry helps with managing correct land and making sure appropriate land is in the program. It provides a yearly incentive payment to encourage sustainable use on forest lands. We often refer to it as a tax incentive program, but it does not directly involve your taxes. Covenant is recorded with enrolled parcels, so that covenant will stay with the property even when it is sold or exchanged. It'll go with the property. It is similar to an easement, but it's not a permanent easement. Building and improvements are allowed on the land as long as it's identified within an exclusion area on the covenant. Once that covenant's in place, though, you cannot develop the land or use it for agriculture use once enrolled. Those are kind of the two main issues we find out there, and that's what we monitor for. So the application deadline for SFIA is October 31st. So if you're looking to put your land into SFIA, that's a big thing to get done. Have your plan written by then and apply. It requires that woodland stewardship plan and registered with the DNR before it can be accepted into the program. Buildings and improvements are allowed as long as it's identified when enrolled. As you can see in the bottom, those incentive payments. So the covenant lengths are 8, 20, and 50 years. And those are the minimum amount of time that you can be enrolled in the program. But that covenant will end up staying with the property forever or until you have it unenrolled. So that has to be a request made to the Department of Revenue. And it takes half the covenant length to be out of the program. So even if you're in it for 8 years and request to be out after 8 years, it'll take another 4 years to get out of the program, but you can be paid during that time. And these are the 2020 payment rates and should be changing shortly. They evaluate property taxes and those numbers will change year to year. The other tax incentive program, which is actually a tax incentive program, is 2C managed forest land. And what this is it will change your tax classification. So in the state of Minnesota, land usually starts at 1% tax rate, and 2C will bump that down to 0.65%. This is administered by the county assessor. So all the DNR make sure is that there is a plan for those acres enrolled into 2C, and we provide that to those county assessors. Pretty much the same as SFIA. Once it's in the program, you can't develop it, use it for agriculture, or subdivide the property. And that application is due by May 1st annually. Also requires that Woodland Stewardship Plan, and it must be registered with the DNR by January 2nd. There's no minimum length requirement for this one, so you can jump out from year to year, and it's a little more accessible in that way. And this just shows how many acres are currently enrolled in the programs. So we just crossed the 1 million acre mark for SFIA, and 2C managed forest land is just under that 300,000 acres. Just as a side note, generally where you see SFIA is more towards the northern part of the state, and 2C makes a little more sense as you get further south, but you have to evaluate your individual property to make sure what one makes sense for you. What do we also provide? We provide project level assistance, cost share programs at the state and federal levels, and I'll go over those right now. So Minnesota state cost share, in that 2018-2017 timeframe, we were given by the legislature a funding amount to help private land owners with forestry projects. The nice thing is there's no minimum requirements, so you don't need that 20 acres like that forest management plan. A stewardship plan is not necessary, but can be helpful for the planning. Each individual landowner can get up to $10,000 per year, but a maximum project is $5,000. And it's roughly 50-50 cost share, but that can change depending on how the project is done. A lot of landowners will do these projects on their own or hire it out, and that doesn't make a difference to us. It's a reimbursement program, so the landowner must front all the costs, and once the project is completed, it'll be certified by a DNR forester, and that's when the payment will be reimbursed. So what kind of projects do we do? The nice thing is we can kind of focus on a wide variety of forestry practices. So here we, improve wildlife habitat by planting oak seedlings for the future. And with it, you can install tree tubes to protect them, and also herbicide spray the ground to make sure there's less competition for that seedling right off the bat. Another goal that we see a lot is improving forest health and productivity. We can provide funding to thin out undesirable trees and promote growth of desired crop trees. Increase plant diversity. We can fund prescribed fire and restore that oak savanna, which is often seen with fire. This is a sample of the project plan you might be provided by your DNR forester. Every DNR forester kind of does it a little different with those project plans, but this is kind of what you'll see. It has a purpose. It looks at the soils, the access, site condition, and then it will hit on what the project method should be. And that's all discussed between you and the DNR forester at the time of the meeting. So then we also have federal cost share programs, which comes from the federal farm bill. And this provides technical service for landowners. There's two serving agencies. There's the NRCS, which runs EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and also the Conservation Stewardship Program. And then the Farm Service Agency runs Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP. So EQIP is similar to our state cost share program. It provides financial and technical assistance to agriculture producers to address natural resource concerns. So a lot of times these programs are focused towards that farmland and turning it back into natural state. And it has a wide variety of potential practices. And the NRCS and producer both invest in these practices, like I said, similar to our program. To show you, this is where EQIP money goes throughout the country. So you can see Minnesota's a little bit on the lower side, but those funds fluctuate by applications. And CRP is the other main project that, or federal program that you'll see, the Conservation Reserve Program. This is a little bit different. It is a yearly rental payment. So it's basically the FSA renting an old farmland and putting it into either grass or trees, depending on the situation. Contracts for land enrolled in CRP are 10 to 15 years in length. And these have a little bit more long-term goals, focused on water quality and soil. This is a map of current CRP enrollment throughout the nation. So you can see in Minnesota, it kind of hugs that where our farmland is in the prairie. And yep. As you can see though, there's been a big change in CRP enrollment. So this is where acres are lost throughout certain areas. And what both programs do is they'll weight by a certain area or state and project. So when you look at the two side by side, federal versus our state cost share, so the federal can have more specific goals, but there is usually more money available for those individual projects. There's a large applicant pool since it's nationwide and weighted scoring for approval, usually specific sign up times, and it can take quite a long time to find out if you're fully approved, sometimes stretching a year or so. State cost share, there's more flexibility with projects when working with a forester. Our cost share is forestry focused, so the federal kind of can vary depending on where you're at. There's less money available per project. We have a 10-year commitment that we require, so if you plant trees, those trees have to be there for at least 10 years. Money is available until our funds are gone. We kind of treat it as a first come, first serve. And it's consistent payment rates across the state, whereas the federal can vary depending on counties. Looking at a little bit more, EQIP and CRP payments vary greatly depending on those projects. And a general rule of thumb when considering if you should go state or federal in size is those large and detailed would be worth exploring the federal programs. Smaller projects such as tree plantings on smaller acres or invasive species removal, the state program may be a better option. In addition, we also offer timber sale assistance. So DNR foresters can come out, appraise timber, pay boundaries, and send out bids for that landowner. We charge a service fee of 13%. But the unfortunate thing is we can't administer the sale once the cutting begins. You would have to do that yourself or hire a private consultant. And those private consultants also assist with timber sales, and all those services are listed above, but they administer the sale. They can negotiate the price for the service and can, like I said, administer the sale once the cutting begins. So it's usually better to go with a consultant, but we do also offer service with the DNR. So how do you get started? Find your DNR area and PFM forester. There's the website, but if you don't want to write that down, you can just Google MNDNR PFM and it'll bring you to multiple pages, and we have information on all these programs within those pages. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. There's my email and my phone number. You can leave me a message, which will be forwarded to my email, and then I can call you back at a later date during COVID. Thank you.